Good morning, folks. Welcome to Half and Half this morning out here in Blue Mounds, Wisconsin. We have kind of a gray day and it is very muggy in here. It reminds me of my childhood in Houston that was very, very humid all the time. It doesn't feel like that very often in Blue Mounds, but we got a really muggy, sticky day. But it's nice and warm, so that's good for movement, and I like that. So I have a little setup here. Maybe you can see. Um, Strap or towel. I have both, but you don't need both. If you have a yoga strap, you can use that. If you have a towel, you can use that. And I thought we'd do some of the head and neck stuff we haven't done in a while that I like using the strap or towel for. And one of the things that can be so tricky and confusing is where your head sits on your body. Seems sort of basic, right? Where does your head sit on your body? But it's very tricky and confusing. So we're really aware, I think, of the neck and shoulders, like sort of shoulder forward position or like the slouching position. I think most of us have a sense when we get caught in that posture and can feel it pretty easily. But the head being a little pitched forward, I think is a little harder to feel and notice, and also a little harder to correct. So maybe you've noticed it in the mirror. Maybe you've looked in the mirror at some point and been like, oh, my head is really kind of pitched forward, with my chest pitched forward. But even that, like a lot of times we just sort of blame that on the shoulders and do something with the shoulders, and we kind of forget about the head being pitched forward. So that's the first thing, is just noticing it and having a sense of it. And then the second thing is like getting it back into place. And one of the things I think it's so reasons I think it's so tricky is that there's nothing over it, right? So my rib cage, I have a reference point of my neck and my waist. My lower back, I have a reference point of my pelvis and my rib cage. I have something on either end that gives me some like proprioception awareness. And in the head, I have my neck, but because I don't have anything connected to the top of my head, it's sometimes just really hard to feel where it is in space. It's a little harder to feel. Um, and so what happens a lot of times is, in order to get the head back into alignment, we do a tip, right? We do just kind of a look up. Or sometimes what we do is we just kind of move the chest and then keep the head in place, and then it's really, really forward, and the chest isn't really in the right place either. So a little tricky to get the rib cage kind of set up, and then at the same time let the head come back without tilting it, right? Without tipping it this way. So you may notice I keep pushing on my chin. I keep putting my hand on my chest and my chin. That gives me pretty good feedback that I use the feeling of creating a little bit of a double chin. And it's somehow related to that. And the more my neck starts to open up, the more it starts to release, the less I feel like I'm actually creating a double chin. But especially when I first started figuring out how to get my head and neck back into place, I really felt like I had a double chin. I kind of did have a double chin. And then eventually some things opened up and I got a little more length and it felt less like that. But it's good reference point. So that's one thing, kind of a double chin feeling to bring it back into place. And then another place I'm really aware of is the back, the connection between the head, the skull, and the neck. The occiput back here, the occipital joint, where the skull and the neck meets. I think they call it the nape of the neck too. Right in there, there's that little bit of a hole there. There's a lot of little muscles, and they sort of fan, little tiny muscles that fan between the um, neck vertebra and the skull, the occipital muscles. And those muscles right there, when they open up, they make a little space for the head to slide backwards and into place. So sometimes I think about like opening all that space too, and maybe a little bit of touch is helpful to bring some proprioception into that, getting the head and the neck back into place. And then I could kind of keep going up a little bit. Like I have one student that would talk about like a push button nose, and she would think of her nose coming back. Um, Sometimes I think of relaxing my forehead. Like all that stuff feels like it has to kind of slide backwards and widen, and then all this stuff in the back of the skull, sliding back and widening. So like a third reason this could be hard, the skull doesn't have a lot of like movable joints. So sometimes it's hard to feel changes in there. So it doesn't mean you can't release and soften and have things shift around, but it's subtle, right? It's subtle when things start to shift around through there. So if you have a yoga strap, then you can take it and just set it out long ways on your strap, just kind of on your mat, just centered, and be a little fussy about it so it's not like wrinkled or crooked. Maybe you already were fussy, but if you're not typically fussy, be a little fussy so it doesn't end up crooked. We need it that way. If you use a kitchen towel instead, you're going to do a slightly different version. I'm going to show both versions, but you can take your towel and just put it crossways the other direction. So you're going to lie back. And if you're lying on the strap, again, be a little fussy so you don't mess the strap up. You want to have your head and then about 6 inches of strap above your head. And if you're on the towel, you're just going to put your head on the towel. Well, that was just like a 30-minute introduction, right? Not quite that. We still got a little time. So again, if you're on the strap, you should feel the strap along your center line of your spine and have a little strap on the bottom. So that's kind of nice. Your pelvis is centered on the strap, your upper back is centered, and your head is centered. And then take a moment and just kind of settle everything into place. Take a couple breaths here. And let the imagery I was just talking about, just kind of muse about it a little bit in your head. See if you can imagine a little bit of space between the skull and the neck in the back, that nape of the neck place. You might think about breathing into that space. Some people do well with breath imagery. You might just think of relaxing around that space, letting it melt or soften. You could think of your jaw being really heavy and relaxed. Sometimes that helps open that space. And then thinking from the front side as well, like the cheeks relaxed, the jaw relaxed, the forehead relaxed. Kind of like you flatten the skull towards the back. Flatten your face towards the back of your skull. And then let's relate it down below a little bit to the rib cage. So things we already know about the rib cage, letting your chest relax with your exhale. And maybe feeling the part of the spine in between your shoulder blades, the thoracic spine, feeling that rest on the mat, maybe a little breath into that space. And then just a hint of the rib connection in the front. We're not going to work super hard on that right at this moment, but a little bit of softness, flexibility, movability around your lower front ribs, letting them sink and letting them draw in towards each other as they sink just a little. Like you could tie the right and left half of your rib cage together with a shoelace. I'll tighten that a little bit. And then just another minute and scan between those 3 places and how those 3 things are interacting with each other and balancing each other out. So the skull and the head and the jaw, kind of that area, how you relax there. and then the chest upper back area, and then the low ribs. And now you're going to be a little less fussy. You were fussy about your strap, but don't be fussy about this. Be a little broad. Just notice those three areas. See if you can find a general balance between all that imagery. Now we're going to take your arms up to the ceiling, hands in line with your shoulders, and do a little bit of work with the overhead arms. So exhale, let your arms start to flow back, and then same thing you were doing a moment ago, just notice head, neck, chest, ribs, all really grounded and open. Stop before your hands touch the floor, and then bring your arms back up to the ceiling. And let's take that a couple times. So float the arms up, and as they float up, they start to move back. Keep dropping the lower ribs, opening the upper back, opening the back of the neck, skull, and the arms float somewhere between halfway and 3/4 of the way back. But never touch the floor. So you always have to work a little bit to hold your arms. And then back up. Take it a couple more times on your own. Take your own pace, however you like. And then rest for a second. And then you can come up to sitting if you want, or you can just turn your head and look at the camera for a second. And just to give a little recap, I know I'm getting kind of slow and detailed today, but that's nice to do sometimes. But a couple things that can happen as your arms go overhead, right? The lower ribs could lift up. That means the chest stayed pretty tight and the upper back stayed tight and the neck, all that stuff happened. Even though it doesn't look like my head is forward in this position, because I've tipped my rib cage, essentially the head is forward of center, of the center of the rib cage, because the rib cage went backwards, right? So I've lost my good head neck position here. So I keep the ribs down. And then sometimes it's not really like the low ribs tipping, it's like the chest lifting up. Same problem again. I've tightened and shortened this here, right? And then other thing that can happen is the head kind of pulled back this way, sort of tipped back this way instead of long back of the neck through here. So we're working our way. I know I made you do this strap and this towel. We're going to get to it. We're working our way into that. We're going to do one more thing, which is to take the arms just a little ways back and then bend the elbows and just see what it's like to like bring the elbows, the arms and the elbows into place without this lifting up. I mean, I really want to do it right here. It's more and more work in my upper abdominals to keep my arms in place here and bend the elbows back. So that's step 2, and then we're going to get to the head lift. So come back on your back if you came up to sitting in a very fussy way so that you don't mess up your strap, right on your towel. And then floating the arms just a little ways back, keeping the ribs heavy, the chest heavy. And then bend your elbows. Keep relaxing the chest and the neck and drawing the ribs together. And then reaching your arms back up. And a couple times like that, kind of a strange work, right? Doesn't seem like you're doing a lot here. And if you don't have all this other imagery, you might not be doing a lot. But if you're really keeping the ribs in place and the chest soft and the head and the neck release, you get all this kind of deep work around the shoulder, kind of a deep release through there in the chest. Just bending and straightening the elbows a couple more times. And the next time you bend your elbows, if you have a strap, reach around and grab the strap above your head. If you have a towel, reach around and grab the ends of the towel in either hand and bring them up into that elbow position, right? So either way, we're kind of still in this bent elbow position set up here. So again, if you have the towel, you're going to pull up on that towel. You're going to keep your head really heavy, all this other stuff that we've been working on, sinking the ribs, sinking the chest, and floating your head up into a little bit of a crunch. And holding that there, head and neck really releasing back into the towel. And then slowly opening everything up as you roll back down. If you're using the strap, same thing. Pulling on the strap a little bit, letting the head be heavy in the strap. Chest relaxes, ribs sink, back of the neck open. And then rolling back down. So we'll work with that a few times. Exhale. Set yourself up. Pulling with your accessory, whatever your accessory is. Letting your neck and your jaw stay totally out of it. Heavy head and the towel or the strap. Easy forehead, easy jaw, easy chest. Coming back down. And I kept you up there a while, right? So you go up, you hang out, you just kind of observe and see what you can do while you're there. It's kind of like a yoga pose, right? You stay in a yoga pose for a while and just let things settle. And coming back down. And one more time. And then this time when you're up there, if you want, see what it's like to let go and take your arms forward. Maybe grab onto your legs. All that same stuff. Can you imagine the back of the neck open? The back of the occiput area, nape of the neck really opening up. Jaw releasing, chest dropping, ribs in. And then holding that place there. Couple breaths. And lowering back down. Okay, I don't know about you, but the more I get everything in place and release all this other stuff, it just gets like crazy work through here, right? So it's one thing lets go, another thing comes on. I'm also checking in with my hips, that my hips aren't pulling up or tightening. That also puts more work, for me, typically in my upper abdominals, but sometimes people feel it in their lower abdominals too, working a little bit more. So either using your towel or your strap and coming up again, doing that same thing, or if you want to try coming up without the towel or the strap and just see if you can find the place. And then again, if you want a visual, if I'm here, my head is forward, right? The strap pulling too much, right? So I want to be that sense of like, I still have the towel, I still have the strap. My upper back comes off the floor, but my head and my neck feels like it's kind of inhabiting the backspace a little more instead of pulling forward into the front. So either using your towel or your strap again or coming up without it and seeing if you can find that place. And I think it's great to grab onto your legs. Give yourself a little help to find your alignment and then letting go if you like. And as you're here and you're breathing, you're letting go where you can let go and just allowing the other stuff to come on a little deeper into the abdominals. And then lowering back down. And release everything. We're going to try it one more time. I'm going to try it one more time. Maybe you're still with me. It's hard. Exhaling. And lowering back down. And then just stretch everything out here and settle and just see where your body naturally falls and what wants to shift around and let go, even if it's not perfectly aligned, right? Give your body just a chance to do its thing. And then find a way up to sitting, however you like. And you could take out your strap and let your towel move off to the side. Take that off to the side. Okay, so maybe you noticed that's kind of the 100 position. We did like a just kind of head and neck 100, right? Holding it up there without doing the arms. And hopefully you have a better sense of where you might want to go and what you might want to feel in the 100. I think you can, if you can spend a lot of time letting stuff go and finding the alignment, you can work so deeply in the abdominals. So you look at it and you go, well, that's not much of a workout. But then you do it and you're like, oh, there was a lot of stuff happening right there. So let's do just a little bit more coming from sitting. So let's start in a sitting up posture, which is basically the same posture that you did lying on your back, right? But now we don't have the proprioceptive feedback of the floor. So it's tricky, but we were there a while, so maybe you have some like leftover sensation there, which would be great. Ribs drawn in, chest softened, and then back of the neck open, jaw relaxed, a little bit sliding the chin back, feeling there. Maybe your knees are bent. You could even be up in a chair if your hips are really tight and you want to work on this posture without having to deal with the hips. Now you may have noticed I snuck my legs open because I'm setting up for spine stretch. I'm going to take my arms forward. And as my arms go forward, my upper back opens, my chest softens, and I feel like the strap was there, the towel was there, and I just let my head float back into it again. And then same thing we just did, that same feeling of curling into the 100, but just from a different space. So just that little bit of upper back curl without dropping your head forward. You keep floating the head like it could float up into the strap or the towel. And then unroll your spine back up. So if you're not sure, you can take a look and see as you go into that kind of 100 curl, the chest softens, the ribs draw in. There's a tendency to hang the head down. Instead, you're going to let it float up and back a little, opening the back of the neck, and then let your upper back open instead. Coming back up. Chest stays soft, ribs stay in, and head floats back. 2 more times. Exhale. And then relax everything. Okay, so legs together. We're going to take that feeling, that round feeling. We're going to add the lower part of the spine to that round feeling. So, one knee bent, right leg bent. Curl your hips under so you're a little leaned back, and then grab the back of your thigh. So we do this one, you know this one. But now we're going to look at all that same stuff. So I'm kind of tipped back and I'm looking out in front of me to start. And then just like you did a moment ago in the spine stretch, let the upper back open, let the ribs draw in, let the chest soften. Let your gaze come down, but don't pull your chin forward to your chest. Don't tip your head and pull your head forward. Open the back of the neck, a little double chin feeling. Soft chest, ribs in. Here we go. Now maybe you like to do this all the way down to the mat. Maybe you like to do it halfway down to the mat. You choose. Everybody's working on the same image, no matter what the range of motion is. And working with this on your own. Probably hit some sticky spots here and there. I do. So give yourself a little time when you get there. See what your body can figure out. One more. And then take that leg out, bend the other knee. So I think it was last week, Scott said he had a teacher that whenever someone said, "What am I supposed to feel?" the teacher would say, "Well, what do you feel?" Whenever the person said, he would say, "Exactly." So that's not always the answer you give. But here we are today. You've got all this imagery, you've messed around with it a little bit. Find what you know and then observe what you feel. And explore a little bit. Does that feel like you did in the last one with the strap? Does it feel like you did earlier lying on your back? Is it your chest? Is it your belly? Is it your jaw? Is it something else? Slow enough that you can have some time to explore and work things out, but not so slow that you get tense or you hold your breath. One more. Okay, so let's pass it off to Scott. We'll let him take the reins a bit, see where he goes.
Good morning, everybody. I think it would be hard to overstate how helpful I found those instructions when I was working with some back pain. When I was a younger man and taking on primarily yoga, the focus was on lifting the chest and holding your head up high. And rarely, if ever, did anyone talk about keeping the thorax integrated with the abdomen. And by lifting my chest and holding my head up, I created a significant disconnect between thorax and abdomen, and my lower back paid the price for that. And so, what you've done has proven so helpful in realigning my body in a really long-term way so that, knock on wood, I haven't had a back incident in, I don't know, 5 or 6 years now, where they used to happen 2 to 3 times a year really reliably. So let's begin in standing and build on what Colette has shared with us already. So in standing, lightly come forward. Remember that imagery of letting your chest soften a bit, keeping your neck long, and let your lower ribs release into the back of your body a bit. Then, just like you've done now in a few different contexts, keeping those lower ribs connected to your belly, keeping thorax connected to abdomen, is your first roll up, ending up with your head held high. And then once you have a sense you're standing up tall, then your shoulders. Lift them a little bit up, a little bit back, not too much, and let them relax down. Remember, you don't want to pull your shoulders down. That's a common misalignment, overcorrection. Let's let them relax. Let's take a few moments here. So, abdomen supports thorax, thorax supports neck, your head stacked above all the others. So now let's bring your left arm up. And then bring your left hand behind your head if you can. Now, keeping that sense of connection, abdomen, thorax, neck, head. Lightly press the back of your head into your hand. And a lot of people report as they do so, they stand up a bit taller. Now, keeping that light pressure head into hand, then take that left elbow more out toward the side. And that helps to strengthen your upper back, the back of your rotator cuff, stronger shoulders. Few more breaths here. And then releasing that left arm down. Remember, a mirror image of you all. So consciously slouching. Once you feel thorax one with abdomen, then like a fern in the forest unfolds. Unfold, lift up. Then gently place your shoulders. And now your right hand behind your head. Lightly pressing your head into your hand. Then taking that right elbow, it's kind of pointing forward right now, isn't it? Take it more out toward the side. Yeah, let's take a few breaths here. And releasing that arm. All right, now let's put this into practice. Step your feet wide apart. Turn your left foot in and your right foot out. Exhale, bend your right knee. Inhale, straighten it. Let's go up and down like that. So this is really nice for mobilizing right ankle, right knee, right hip, left hip. If you keep that back foot flat on the floor, maybe you're already feeling how it can mobilize left ankle. So next time, knee in the bent position, let's pause there. And take a few breaths here, aligning abdomen, thorax, neck, and head. Now with the next out breath, tip your hips just a bit, hand to knee, hand to hip. So now with your spine in the diagonal, bring your left hand behind your head. Lightly press your head into your hand, just like we did in standing. Then take your left elbow more up toward the ceiling. And a few breaths here. And then with the next in-breath, come on up. And back to the front. Second side, turn your right foot in, turn your left foot out. Synchronize movement with breath. Out breath, bend. In breath, straighten. So now in your lower body, remember that this movement helped to mobilize 5 joints. So let's take a few moments quietly for you to check in with those 5 joints, feeling their movement, their articulation. And next time, knee in the bent position, let's pause there. With the next exhale, then tip your hips. We'll pause here for a bit. Abdomen, thorax, neck, head, all in continuity. Maintaining that continuity, now bring your right hand behind your head. Lightly press your head into your hand. And then keep that connectedness, that lengthening, as you now take your right elbow more up toward the ceiling. And ride the next inhale up. Turn back to the front. And then step your feet together. Consciously slouching. Slouching isn't all bad, because slouching tends to reset thorax abdomen alignment. So using the good points of slouching as you unfold, as you rise up. And keeping that interconnectedness, set your shoulders. In a few breaths, standing tall. But unlike my earliest years of yoga, standing tall integrated. Very different than standing tall disconnected. So maintaining that central axis core body integration, now bring both hands forward. Interlace your hands, and a lot like you've done on the floor before. Bring both hands behind your head. Lightly press your head into your hands. And as you continue standing tall, then taking both elbows more out to the side. I just felt my lower ribs tending to push forward toward the camera. So reminding those lower ribs to stay connected to the belly. Couple more breaths here. And then release your hands down. Alrighty, so now the psoas walk. Bring your hands to your hips. Take your left foot, step it a little bit back. And once you're sure that both your feet point straight ahead, we're going to initiate the movements from the left heel. Inhale, lift that heel to come forward. Exhale, descend that heel to move back. Inhale forward. Exhale back. And next time that back heel lifted, let's pause there. Integrate your midline, abdomen, thorax, neck, head. And see if you can maintain that integration. Now to release your left side iliopsoas. Take your heel back and down. Check in with your core body integration. And interlace your hands. Bring your hands behind your head. And to stand up a little taller, lightly press your head into your hands. And then to help tone the muscles in your shoulders and upper back, take your elbows a little bit more back. But more important than taking your arms back is to stretch your elbows away from each other to create broadness across your chest and to create openness between your shoulder blades. A few more breaths here. And release your arms and return to standing. Second side, take your right foot back, hands on your hips. Once you're sure both feet point straight ahead, stand up tall in that connected way. Right heel, inhale, lift, forward movement. Exhale, downward descent, backward movement. Inhale, exhale. Now, next time that back heel lifted, let's pause there. Core body integration. Like Colette shared with us, that's a lot about releasing tension. It's not just about engaging or gripping. It's an interface of some activity with a lot of releasing, letting go. So now to release your right side iliopsoas muscle, take that right heel down and back. Once you feel that heel on the floor, bring your arms forward. Interlace your hands. Hands behind your head. Right. So this pressing is maybe a pound. It's not a lot. It's more just a suggestion than a dynamic effort. And once you have a sense of standing tall, core body integrated, then take your elbows primarily apart and secondarily back and breathe. And releasing your arms and returning to standing. Now let's make our way to the floor. Exhale, both arms up. Inhale, fold. Knees can bend as much as you like. Exhale, reach the crown of your head forward. And then with the inhale, step both feet back. Yoga pose, head down, dog. And then with the out breath, come on down to your knees. And then to reprise some of what you worked on earlier, move lightly into cat pose, that's spine flexion. It's as if the top of your head was moving toward your tailbone, and your tailbone were moving toward the crown of your head. This is not exactly what you did earlier with Colette, but maybe you're feeling that there is some overlap. So this sense of your chest soft and your lower ribs relaxing into the back of your body. So maintaining that interconnectedness as you move from spine flexion to neutral spine. So unfolding your spine, just like we did in standing a few times, just like you've done in reclining a few times. Now see if you can maintain that interconnectedness as you move into spine extension, cow pose. Now for almost everybody, myself included, lower ribs tend to fly to the floor. If flying to the floor is actually what happens, it can be kind of abstract. But even as you look more forward, there can be a sense of connectedness, can't there? A couple more breaths here. And then back to a neutral spine. All right, so now move to your belly. So join your heels. Stretch your toes back so your feet are in Pilates V. At the same time, reach the crown of your head forward. And technical term is coming up here. Snuggle your shoulder blades up against your back ribs. And keeping that placement of your scapulae as you hover your hands up, as you reach them back, And then if possible, interlace your hands, but see if you can interlace your hands without clenching your upper back. Keep your chest broad and your upper back broad. So got a lot of moving parts here. What's going on in your back and your chest? What's going on with your midline, the interconnectedness? And then with the next exhale, lift up into locust. That's so your legs come up a little bit, your upper body lifts up a little bit. See if you can maintain that essential interconnectedness. Then if you like more challenge, you could float your arms up and take your elbows just a little bit straighter. And steady breathing here for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Replace your hands by your armpits. To help build strength, push up to hands and knees. And back to head down dog. 3 breaths here. And come on down. And into seated. So seated with knees bent, feet flat upon the floor. And it could either be your hands catching your knees or your elbows catching your knees. So maintaining that interconnectedness, root down to sit up tall. So placing your spine in the vertical axis. Now see if you can maintain that verticality as you cross your legs. Spinal twist. Bring your left hand across, right hand behind. Twisting your spine about that vertical axis. All the same elements hold true here. Integrated, mainly releasing effort, small amount of effort. Back to the middle. So practice sitting posture. You could use this at your desk, your computer. You'd be very formal, watch television like this. Second side. There's talk in our household about reducing the amount of furniture we have. Wouldn't be surprised one of these days that I come home and the sofa's gone and we're sitting upright like this. Couple more breaths. Probably be really good for our bodies to ditch the chairs, ditch the sofa. And then come back toward the middle and practice sitting upright, supporting internally rather than the habit of leaning into external support. So let's take a few more breaths here, practicing supporting from internally. It is interesting to see cultures that practice this way of holding their bodies, sitting, relaxing, tend to hold up really well as their bodies age. All right. I don't know about you, but that session seemed to go really quickly. So before we depart for the day, any comments, questions? Looks like it's kind of quiet out there. Thank you so much. We do this every Saturday, half and half. And if you like what you see here, check out our other offerings, pilatesonharrison.com. And we're offering 17 classes a week that are really based on these core principle ideas. Thanks so much, and let's do this again very soon.